Will this be the last game of the match? World champion Zhu WENJUN starts with e4, and all she needs is one draw in the remaining 4 games. The challenger Tan ZHONGYI responds with Sicilian defense c5, and she has to win 4 games in a row. Will it happen? Knight f3, knight c6, the most popular continuation here for white recently became Rosalina, with bishop b5, e6 for black, Zhu WENJUN castles, knight develops to e7 for Tan ZHONGYI, rook goes to e1, knight jumps to the middle of the board on d4, there is an exchange of the knights on d4, and white plays c3 challenging this pawn on d4. a6, asking the bishop where it will go, and bishop returns to the initial square where it started the game on f1. Knight jumps to c6, and white knight goes to a3 to develop into the game from the square c2. Bishop e7 preparing the castle, knight goes to c2, we have d5 strike in the middle for Tan ZHONGYI, knight takes d4, exchange of the knights on d4, pawn takes e4, and now rook takes e4 would not be a good move, because after rook takes e4, b5, black has a very good development with the bishop. After bishop b7, white would have double pawns, d2 and d4, and their position will not be that good. So therefore, rook takes e4 was not played. Instead, white played a very correct move, d3. Challenging the pawn on e4. We have an exchange of the pawns on d3. Bishop captures the pawn and develops at the same time to d3. Castle for black and bishop e4, creating some problems for black. They cannot play b5 because the rook would be under attack. They cannot develop so easily the bishop. Let's say bishop d7, bishop would take on b7. So therefore, black have to be careful and actually counter-attack with bishop f6. Zhu WENJUN defends the pawn with bishop e3, g6 for black, and queen b3, sacrificing the pawn on d4, but only temporarily. Bishop takes d4, rook d1, actually pinning the bishop to the queen. e5 is the only move to protect the piece. We have exchanges on d4, and queen goes to b4, and now the pawn on d4 cannot be protected, and will be going into an endgame, and all Zhu WENJUN needs in this game is a draw. So black play a5, attacking the queen, queen takes d4, and here the only way for black to continue and try to come up with some winning ideas would be, of course, not to exchange the queens, to leave the best piece on the board, but instead, I believe Tan ZHONGYI already realized her fate, that she will not be able to win 4 games in a row. She exchanged the queens on d4, she played bishop e6, and after bishop d5, rook d8, pinning the bishop. So rook d1 had to be played to protect that bishop on d5. Rook c8. Now white have to be actually careful, because if they take the bishop on e6, after rook takes d4, rook takes d4, they will be checkmated on the first rank. So that's important. Instead, Zhu WENJUN obviously sees it and plays a very nice move, king f1. Simple move, but that protects the king and creates an escape square on e2. Rook d6 and bishop takes e6. More exchanges. And now the same idea doesn't work, because after exchange of the rooks, rook c1 check, the king would escape to the square e2. After king f1 and bishop takes e6, rook takes e6, we have exchange of the rooks on the square d8, king g7, rook d7, and b6. We have an endgame with a rook against a rook and 5 pawns against 5 pawns. Absolutely joyish position. Nothing really can be done here. None of those players is gonna blunder a rook or even a pawn. So more moves were made pretty quickly, and after position was repeated several times, both players agreed to a draw. Zhu WENJUN won the match easily, 6.5 to 2.5, and became a 5-time world champion. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe, leave a comment. Thank you for watching.